Hey guys, I'm Matt Nash. Welcome back to my studio in Amsterdam. Today I'm going to take you through my remix of Otto Knows track Dying For You. I really took like small sections of the track and really did my own thing with it. Like I only used the full vocal in one section of the song and just used a loop of it and kind of warped it up quite a lot. So I'll take you through all of that. And this one's quite a bit epic compared to the last one. So there's, as you guys can see, there's a really heavy project. So let's start with the first drop, which is sort of the most minimal. Actually, no, let's start with the last drop, and so we can cover all the elements that are in there and really go for it. So we'll start with the leads of the drop. I think that makes the most sense. The lead sound on this one is coming from Nexus again. It's not anything insane, but again, it's carried with the processing, and this is what it sounds like. It's quite like a simple rhythm, but once you get the processing on that, it sounds. So one thing that really made this sound work really well was adding like a really small amount of vibrato. So if I take the vibrato off and then add that, but basically making sure the vibrato speed is really fast, and that's sort of how you end up with that. It makes the sound a little bit more interesting. So look, I'll bring the plugins in one by one again. So first up, the faithful quadrifuzz, always bringing the good times with the distortion. And then next up, we have a fab filter. We didn't really want the bottom in this sound. Again, I'm going to do the low end with a separate sub. Next up, again, the Valhalla room, really reliable, always great. Similar settings to some of the other stuff I've been doing. And then Camel Fat, again, I used that for the sidechain. I've got it set at 100%, and that's the only thing I'm doing with the Camel Fat. And then again, another EQ, just taking a bit of low out and a little bit of 5K there. And that's pretty much the lead sound. And then what we've got, another sound that's going with that is this stab sound here, which is going, there's like 3 different stab sounds that go around that rhythm. And the first one is here, which is this weird sort of decimated patch, which is coming from Nexus. And I've just taken a lot of the bottom out on the EQ. Now this is where I did use the Magneto plugin, and I just cranked it up really high because it really brought a lot of presence. It kind of brought a lot of body to the sound more than I expected. And Camel Fat, I've just got, again, doing the sidechain, but I've got the sidechain way lower than I did on the lead sound in this one. It's only at 24%. And then a bit of reverb. And then also there's 2 other stabs. What I ended up grouping them they're both from Spire. And I kind of, what I did with there's 2 patches here. One takes the more like glistening sort of pad sound to it, and the other takes the more, a bit harder to it. They are quite similar, but they're both tonally a little bit different. But I edited these patches and made sure they were similar in down here, because basically what I did is I put this envelope onto the cutoff, and I basically added this attack to it. So originally the sound was like this. No, sorry, is it 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah. So basically, there's an attack on the cutoff envelope, but also on the overall volume ADSR. So I put attack on both of those. So originally it was like this, but I didn't really want the bite there. It was a quite aggressive bite. So I did this, but then I made sure, because I was using 2 spire patches here, I really wanted to make sure that they, the attacks were set up the same so that they really locked in together. And then I think I panned these both left and right just to make them a little bit wide, and then processed them together here. I put the side chain on together, and I also really rolled up the, I didn't want the bottom in there. So there's a lot of body in those sounds. And it was kind of interfering with my other elements, so I took it way up to here. And it fits a lot better with my, my lead sound. That's our main sort of bunches of synths that comes in and out throughout the track. So we're going to look at the kick and bass balance on this one, because I kind of, it's kind of a strange combo, because I kind of pulled a lot of stuff from older tracks well, not old, but recent tracks. And so I've got the same kick that I've got from the other track here. I've EQ'd, no, I haven't EQ'd it a little bit different. It does actually sound a little bit different because it's going into the processing, and once it always comes out a little bit different with every single track. But what I've got here is I've got one Nexus saw sound, really basic saw, and I've really beefed it up with the harmonic exciter, and I've really dialed in at 49 Hertz, quite a lot, to be honest. I usually wouldn't go that hard, but if you hear the bass sound without it, it's quite, really doesn't have any body, but then when you bring it in, really brings in that low end. So when I do that with the kick, so I haven't got the side chain, that's why it sounds completely. So if you took off this, you see all your low end disappears. So it's really takes it underneath, and you can hear when that goes off, you can hear like the kick and the bass like really lock in. They really lock in together, so it's really important. No, I didn't have that. I've got a little bit of EQ here, again adding more low end. But then also I got this sample from a different bass sound I did, and like added, and I cut it about to give me this kind of, which is actually from a different track I've done called Louder, and it just, when you put those together, you kind of, it adds these like these little knocks into the bass sound, because for some reason that sample brings a tone that I can't quite get from anything else. So that's sort of our low end combo really. So when you put these in with the other synths we were using earlier, kind of sounds really tight together, but as we're on the, that would be like what my first drop is sounding like. Cool. All right, so that's mainly our synths that's going on in the drop here. The other stuff is a combination of audio and percussion, drums and stuff like that, and lots of effects. So what we'll do is we'll look at those now. Okay, so there's a lot of, the drop on this last one is quite busy, so there's quite a lot of drum work. But so I have got this loop in here, which is in the same, the tom hits are in the same rhythm as the track, so you get this sort of. But what I did do on this is I sidechained it quite heavily, because without the sidechain, those toms really interfered. And then we've got some more toms here, but they're a little bit more. You can see those there. Again, these are some samples that I pulled in from a previous project. And then I've got like this this clap loop again, which is from another older project. I really like to use older drum sounds. Some people really don't like reusing stuff from old projects, but I feel like it really helps you have, people can tell that that's your production when you're using sounds and bits you've used before without, you know, obviously you can take the piss and use like one bass sound like 12 times and it's a bit ridiculous, but I think there's certain stuff that you can use over and again, especially with this sort of drum stuff. And then what my favorite thing to add to this drop here was this little thing inside Nexus, and it's like this conga on a and what I did with it is there's like I used the ARP inside Nexus, and I basically set it to 1/16, so it's playing every time. But if you adjust this shuffle here, so if you hear it with 0 shuffle, it's just dead straight and it's kind of a little bit lifeless. But then when you dial in the shuffle, it's basically adding groove into it. And I just kind of went up to 20, and it was like this adds a lot of pace without it being too jarring. So when you have like all of the all of the drum elements in here together. This really adds a lot of taste to it. And we've got a few other hi-hats down here. So that's pretty much all of our drum things here. You can see they're all sounding really nice together. Quite a busy groove. And one thing I did add that I really liked here was this sort of, this was just a slice of the vocal that I repeated over and over again. Side chain, how much did I pitch it up? Oh, I just pitched it up 2 semitones and just fitted it in with a really basic, took, you know, loads of body out, side chained it with the camel fat, and this really really brought a lot of energy to the last drop. So it's really important that all the drums and all the synths, they're all in the same sort of, you know, rhythms with each other, so it's all very syncopated and it sort of ties in quite nicely. So that's pretty much all the elements in the drop. I think it's if we go over to the breakdown now, we can have a look at what's going on. That stuff's quite a bit more musical and a lot more epic. So let's go over there. There's quite a few sounds going on here. So I'll start with the first sound that I made to get me going. And what I did is that same sample from, I basically sliced loads of stuff from the vocals, and this was one of those. And it sort of oh, it's filtering up. There we go. I basically cut this and pitched it up and down to create those notes, like that. And I just did this by just, it's got a little bit of camel fat on, just doing sidechain, and then quite a lot of filtering, no body in there. But all it was slicing the vocals and pitching them up and down. That kind of gave me my whole rhythm for the breakdown. And we also have a guitar. Now the guitar is quite interesting because it's the main rhythmic instrument in the breakdown. It's this one. Oh, I need to go a bit further on. Yeah, need the group. Now this I kind of did this in quite a strange way. It's kind of odd. The original sound sounds like this. Now it's just a Nexus. No, it's not a Nexus. It's a contact bank using this VI1 library. It's just a fairly normal guitar patch. But what it does, what I've had to do on the processing is when you bring the CLA guitars on, which is really cool, really cool plugin, and you can get really interesting character and really interesting. It really brings guitar to life because it sort of reamps them in a way that's really interesting, and it's got some compression and like reverb and delays. So once you put that on, it starts to obviously come to life quite a lot. But like, and then after doing that, I added some EQs. I wanted a bit less body in there, and then I added camel fat. Not too sure what I did with that. Yeah, this is where it got kind of odd. I kind of scrolled through a preset and found something that I really liked and then tweaked it. But basically that guitar felt a little bit too slow for this breakdown, and I really wanted to keep the energy up. So basically I added this thing on, and I ended up doing like setting a LFO to ramp the cutoff knob down 1/16. So it basically ends up doing this. And I know it doesn't sound that much, it just sort of more sounds like muted guitars than like big loud guitars, but it fitted the track a lot better, like this. And I just thought I really wanted that guitar to be there, but I felt like this did it a lot better. And that's sort of how the guitar came about. And then I added the Valhalla room on there, and then I added the fab filter on there. Again, I did some really, because you can hear obviously on that guitar that it's kind of like by rolling down the by the cutoff closing 116, it takes the sound to be really muted and really quiet. So I obviously needed to, I didn't want it to be that muted, and but I wanted the rhythm to happen. So I had the rhythm like that, and then boosted the top end quite crazy, and you end up with this. But without it, it's a bit lifeless. And then because I was using like some real sampled guitar, and the volumes are obviously a little bit all over the place, I needed to basically get a compression involved to basically try and tame it a little bit. So I really sucked out a lot of compression going on in the sort of mid-high and in the body of the sound. And then again, just re-cued a little bit more, took a little bit more body out. Really, with this sound, it ended up becoming all about how to tame it and make it sound like controlled. And then again, I got another CLA 2A just to even things out a little bit more. Yeah, and that's the guitar. And what I laid it up with is basically I've had this piano recorded from a different song. It was like a live recording, and it was just, I had this this guy played like 2 octave notes, and what I did with that is I pitched it into the key of the track, which was ended up being 1 semitone down, and it really sounded really nice. Just this really reverb delayed out piano. But that was a sample that was from a different track of mine. So if you have that with the guitar, it's like, it creates this really nice ambience whilst keeping the rhythm going. And then basically we then brought in some more elements here to sort of progress it. We've got another pad coming here, which is from Synth, and to be honest, I just kept this one quite filtered. I didn't really want the top end taken up, so I just kept that filtered down on camel fat and EQ'd a little bit of bottom out of there. It looks like I kind of got a bit of a contradictory EQ there. It's low cut and a bit of boosting as well. The pad's coming in there with the bass sound, which is sort of bringing out some making it sound quite nice and warm. So we've got the guitar, we've got this sort of high-end piano thing, we've got a pad, we've got sort of something covering the low frequencies, and then we've also got a piano as well, which is a Nexus one here. Again, with the Nexus pad, I really like to do like a little high cut here because I don't really like the body of it. And then I use a CLA just to squish in it together. A bit of an EQ here. These EQs are mainly just to bring it out in the mix with the other elements. So yeah, that's pretty much all the instruments for the breakdown. Now I sort of and then otherwise the vocal is their vocal was incredibly well recorded, so it was kind of very easy, and they had these stems that of just ad-libs that I really liked and kind of made part of the vocal files. So the vocal files we used in this were both dry, and so they gave me wet, but I kind of wanted to process them and fit them in my project a little bit better. So I used the CLA vocals, and the CLA vocals is really great if you've got some dry vocals and you just want to get in there and just like go through some presets and then tweak those presets how you want. I ended up just going and adding some compression with this. I kind of like how simple it is to add compression. You can just dial the amount of compression and pick between 3 different modes. It's really good to get going. I used the Valhalla room again, quite simple, quite a small amount of mix on that one. And then I used the H delay. I left the filter open on this quite wide because there's quite a lot of gaps in the vocal and I wanted to fill it out quite nicely. And then the camel fat, again, I just ended up dialing in. I always do this. I always dial in like a tiny bit of sidechain on the vocals. Just, I don't know why, I like it ducking a little bit. I'm so used to it. And then on the vocal, it's very weird EQing, but I basically just boosted all of the mid-range. Quite simple, but again, when I'm on the last EQ of the channel, it usually means it's just me mixing it in with other elements. So that's pretty much it on that vocal chain, and then I have the chorus vocal here, which has a bit more, has a CLA vocal doing the same compression, H delay doing the same delay, and then a camel fat. But I've got the side chain up quite a bit higher here at 40% because there's a bit more beat, and the beat's quite a bit more busy at that point, and I always use side chain to try and, when I'm run out of space, you know, there's lots of elements going on. If you want to use side chain to sort of help get some space in there, it's always a good idea. So that's the vocal there as well. And then what I did do is I used, like, the song's called Dying For You, and the key line of the song is I'm dying for you. So I really liked the sound of that, and I basically got this bit here. Dying for you, yeah. Dying for you, yeah. But I kind of fucked with it a little bit. So I got the same compression as before. And then what I did with the elastic thing, I pulled the timbre down, which is the same as the Foreman, and I moved it down 4, and it kind of sounds a little bit cooler. So if this is normally, right, that one, okay, and like it sounds quite nice, but when it's down there, it kind of sounds a little bit darker. So I really liked that. So I used it all the time, like in the rise sections and everything. It was really nice. And one thing I really liked when I was doing this track is obviously the drop and the breakdown feel so far apart. So whenever you can get them to work together is always a great thing. So halfway through the drop, you sort of get, well, when the drop's coming to an end, you get this section. It's nice that the elements can all fit on top of each other and kind of work together. I think that really helps your track. Otherwise you feel like you've got your drop here and your breakdown here, and they just completely don't tie together. So let's look at some of the elements I use to transition into some of the sections. So one of the things I did with the vocals, obviously I was telling you guys earlier that I really sliced the vocal track on this to pieces, and obviously we've got the Dying For You repeated, but one thing that I really liked about this here was, so you've got the vocals coming in here, and you kind of got like this high vocal coming on top of it. And what I did is I basically took their vocal again, held and sliced it on the grid, repeated it 4 times, and then added like an octave down, just using the Cubase transpose on the last one, and it kind of gives you that nice layer on like the yeah of his vocal, and it kind of just brings it back down before you drop in on the build, before it sort of kicks off again. So I like doing all of those those vocal effects, and then it also comes in again here, and like I did it again, like I did this little a little bit differently. It's sort of, I did a little reverse, so it's like but rather than leaving it normally, I reversed it, so sort of flew it back into the next bit, and then also when that's also doing its reverse, I have this little synth shot, this sort of sound here, which is again just this vengeance shot. I've put some side chain, I've added a little bit of tube saturation to fatten it up, and it sort of makes it, you know, it's sort of a nice little different sound to come in to keep it interesting. I'm pretty sure that's most of what we've got here. There's a lot of effects in here. As you can see, there's shitloads of just white noise and impacts. I'll try and show you guys some of those quickly. A lot of these, some of these will be from Vengeance, which are pretty standard. A lot of them, I tend to reuse a lot of the same sort of like effects and you know, standard white noise risers and stuff like that. I tend to use the same ones over again. So a lot of the stuff is re-dragged back in from older projects, and so you sort of get this big wall of effects, which is always nice. So those sort of stuff's really important, especially when you're coming up to the breakdown here as well. There's a lot of audio-based sample stuff. And then before the break synths are coming in, there's lots of reverses. So again, what I've done with the vocal, before the vocal comes in here, again, I've done taken the first like syllable word there, printed off like an 8-bar with really like as much milliseconds of reverb as you possibly can, bounce that out to audio, reverse it, and you get this sort of effect, which is great when you hear the vocal come in. It makes it really smooth. Really, really nice, and that's always good to do with pianos and all sorts of elements. I see if there's some. Got it down here as well. A small one for that before the piano comes in, which sounds really cool. Those sort of stuff really make the transitions really smooth. With remixing, I think it very much comes down to what the track is. I always try and make sure that I really love the original track. If I don't love the track, you're probably not going to do a good job of it. You'll probably butcher it and whatever. It's just generally not the best idea to do a track that you're not feeling. So I really liked the vocal on this, but I felt that the original was a little bit too commercial, and I kind of wanted to bring like a darker, cooler edge to it. When you're working on a remix, you want to get your own stamp in there, just because you don't want to be that producer it could be anyone making the track. I like when I am working, I tend to use a lot of the same drum sounds, a lot of the same effects. For me, I like to use the same sounds, maybe to use them in a different way. Like I've used this bass sound before, but it sounded completely different. I think that doing things like that is a way to sort of get around, to make it sound like your own, but still be fresh, and you can't just keep recycling the same stuff. But don't be afraid to use. There's a balance, and I think that's important. I found that when you're time stretching stuff, it's completely hit and miss. Like sometimes Cubase will smash the stretching, and it'll be perfect. A lot of the time, I just use I find out what the tempo of the remix is, and usually if I'm lucky I can type in the tempo and then set it to time stretch to the BPM of the project, and that usually works for me really, really well. Other times I'll get phrases in there and I'll slice up bits of phrases, time stretch them, make them fit, because sometimes you have a bit of a different groove in your track and a different rhythm to how they've sung it maybe, and that's where you'll want to change it a little bit. And but generally, the time stretching these days is so on point. If I'm really, really struggling, sometimes I'll pull the hit points up and start dragging things about. But generally, I prefer to slice on the grid and move it about till I'm happy. Swing, well, I've recently started using the Cubase swing, especially when you've got like I was showing you earlier with the sort of like congry sort of sound. This thing was, without swing, it sounded crap basically. It just sounded really straight and not very danceable, which is obviously the idea. And when I'm working with MIDI and audio, I can get the same thing out of this, out of the quantized thing here. You can just change the swing, up to, the great thing is if I put that on 20%, it'll be in sync with that other thing being 20% as well. So generally, when I'm working on track, it depends on the track. Sometimes the rhythm of the bass sound or whatever will have a natural groove to it. Sometimes it needs a little bit of swing added into it, but it's different with every single time. I use the gate quite a bit on there. They have because I've come from Cubase 4 and stuff, I bring quite a lot of those plugins with me. So there's a dynamics one that I quite like to, even though it's a really old school version, the gate on it is quite good, and so is the compressor on it. So I always find myself using that. But to be honest, I prefer to Cubase is great with the audio, so I prefer to I prefer to just slice audio than use gates. I find you can control what you're doing. With a gate, it's sort of like a one threshold fits all problems, and it doesn't really end up as clean as I want it. Hey guys, hope you've enjoyed being in the studio with me. I hope you picked up some cool stuff. Make sure you come check me out on my social media. I'll see you guys soon.